Good morning, everybody. I am Menelik Fernandez, and welcome to Run It Back, episode number 33. I tend to start all of these exactly the same, so I will start it exactly the same. Basically, the premise of Run It Back is we take teams that have played previously and we run it back, so to speak, where we look at things that worked in the matchup, things that didn't work in the matchup, what we would do differently if we were to play a theoretical rematch, how we prepared for the contest, and just like what went into the scouting and what went into preparation, etc. So today we are taking a look at a game that happened on November 22nd, 2019. It was the matchup of Chapman versus Pacific Lutheran. Today, we are very, very lucky to have the assistant coach from Chapman join us. So we're going to be doing this game, obviously, from Chapman's perspective. The assistant coach from Chapman is Dan Krikorian. So Dan has been with Chapman since 2013-14 season and is currently the associate head coach there. He spent 4 years previously at Costa Mesa High School, where they gained two CIF playoff berths and set the school record for wins in a season. He's a former player at Chapman himself, which I give a big hoorah to because I played and coached for my alma mater as well at the high school level. And I actually made the red shirt at York University where I first started coaching as well. So I followed similar sort of path. And then in addition to being a former player at Chapman, Dan's life outside of basketball is massive as well. He's an accomplished musician, a professor, a podcast host of both The Beautiful Work and a little known basketball podcast called Slapping Glass. So Dan, I want to start by saying thank you very much for joining us this morning. It's a real pleasure to have you on.
Menelik, thanks so much for having me and for that introduction. Sounds like I've done a lot more than I really have, but thank you for making it sound that way. I appreciate it. I'm excited to be on with you, so thank you.
Awesome. So when we start with these, usually we talk about preparation and the scouting process and all that. So let's dig in there. Basically, this game took place, it's a little bit over a year ago now. It was early in the season. You had 9 days off from the previous game until this game. When do you start this scout? How many games are you watching? Are they focused on particular matchups, or like just talk about the whole process of what goes into a scout for you?
Yeah, so this was a fun trip for us because it was the first 2 games of the season for us. We had, I think, 14 or 15 new guys on the roster for us. We had 4 out of 5 starters were new starters, and we had 2 or 3 of our key bench players were also new players. So we didn't know what the heck to expect. With a brand new team, it's one thing to go prepare for a game. It's another thing to go prepare for 2 games back to back when you're flying up to the games and
Right.
You don't know how guys are when they travel or what their guys are like in the hotel room or if they're going to be problems. And, you're trying to still figure out your team. So this was a trip for us. I mean, we had played an exhibition game, like you said, 9 days before. And this early in the season, you're just so focused on trying to create your own identity as a team that, I remember pretty well going up to these 2 games. We had 2 identities we were really trying to staple as well as, win some games. And to be perfectly honest, no suspense here. We win this game. We should not have won this game. We lost the next night. We should have won the next, we should have been 1-1, but it should have been probably flip-flop the games we won and lost when you talk about how well or not well we played. But, we did do, leading up the 2 days before we left for the trip, we did do in our practices, we prepared for both teams. So we've kind of looked at the way both teams played and tried to, have bits of practice to prepare because we just weren't going to have time up there to do the second game because it wasn't going to be a practice really before that. So we were preparing for 2 games at once and more looking at their overall style of play and what we needed to do defensively and then how we wanted to play offensively. And so, luckily both of these teams were very good teams. Obviously one beat us, but they weren't overly set heavy. Like, from what we had seen the year before, they ran great action as we'll get into, but it wasn't like we were preparing for 30 set plays the first game of the year, which we wouldn't do anyway, but we were really looking at conceptually what they were trying to do and then how we can best, take that out of it. And then I know you're going to ask these questions, but our identity, we were doing this no middle defense, the Texas Tech. I talked to you about it before, where we were
Right.
really trying to establish switching, keep it out of the middle. And that was a big focus defensively, no matter what they ran. And then we'll talk about the offensive side here, but that's a basic outline what we're looking at.
So this early in the season, what specifically are you looking at film-wise? Like, are you going back to the year before? Obviously you coached multiple years in the same conference and you know the head coach. Were you looking at his consistent style of play? Like, how are you forming what you're actually giving your guys? And what you're giving your guys, what does that actually look like?
Yeah, so we were looking at, with the first game of the year, that's always tough. And I'm looking back at my notes here, but yeah, it's always tough because you don't have a lot of film on that team. We had played, so the head coach for Pacific Lutheran, Chad Murray, is a fantastic coach. We had played him at previous stops. He was at Cornell before that as a head coach. And so we had played Cornell before. And so we were a little bit familiar, and he played for my head coach, for my boss back in the day. So, not that tells you what he's going to run in a game, but we had a little familiarity with who he was from the past. So, we looked at some past film, we looked at what they ran the year before. And then luckily for us, they returned a lot of guys. And so we at least had a lot of stats and a lot of, ideas to what they were going to do going into that first game. So they were a pretty senior laden team. They had a lot of guys that were coming back, and we were concerned about that because we knew we were going to roll out 4 new starters, one of them being a freshman and a couple of freshmen off the bench and a sophomore, and they were rolling out a bunch of juniors and seniors. And so we were focusing in on their personnel mostly with a few of their actions.
Awesome. So when you say you're focusing in on their personnel, and you talked about you prepared for both games going in that week, I'm assuming there's probably some sort of piece of paper that's given to your players. How is that delivered? What does that look like for you guys as a process? Is it when you're focusing on personnel, do you give everyone from the other team, or are you giving your particular matchups to those particular players type deal?
Yeah, so the eternal battle of getting your guys to read a piece of paper with a scout report on it, right, and pay attention. And after the guy bangs a 3 in his face, look over at us and say, "He's a shooter." It's like, yeah, we've been going over this for 3 days. He's a shooter. Okay, read the scout report. But yeah, so we actually this year for the first time we did the Fast Scout. So Fast Model, Fast Draw has the Fast Scout app, and so we tried that out. So the guys, if they don't want to read a piece of paper, obviously you can send it to them in an app, and it has all the guys' breakdowns, and it shows the picture of them and things like that. And then as coaches, we can write in key points. And then what I like about the app is you can see who viewed the pages and for how long.
Yep.
So
it's a beautiful thing for sure.
And let me tell you, the guys hated that because the first going up to Seattle to play these couple of games, the day before the game, I'm looking at the app and I'm going to a couple of our guys going, "Hey, it looks like you haven't looked at any of the scout sheets." "Oh, sorry, I'll do it." We get that figured out eventually, but yes, we do give it to them in an app, but then our head coach likes to have everything in paper. So we'll also write out a short 1-page paper scout as well.
Nice. And matchups you would, like, so for, I don't know, whatever player on your team, you would specifically give them their matchup and talk about traits for their matchup, or would everybody know who Leighton Kingma is and how to play Leighton type deal?
Yeah, exactly. And so, last year, who knows what we're going to do the next time, but last year we were switching 1 through 5. So yes, we went over matchups for sure, but as soon as they start running action and we're switching out, it was like everybody's got to know who everybody is a little bit. And then we have a few terms from our bench that we have 3 different terms, and I don't know if I want to say exactly because there's some guys in our conference sitting in this call right now, but but he might know them. But so we have ways that we communicate from the bench to the floor what each guy is, and basically, is he a shooter, is he a driver, is he a mixture of both, whatever. So everybody has that, so that way we're able to, with one word, when we are switching off on stuff, to communicate to guys exactly who the top guys are that we need to account for. So yes, we did go over the scout in a general sense, I mean, for sure, but at the end of the day, guys kind of had to know a little bit of everybody.
For sure. So I find that typically in doing this show over this duration of time that for the most part, especially when games take place early in the season, you tend to focus more on your stuff.
Yeah.
And like you mentioned, James, who's in your conference, is actually in the call. I actually texted James last night and was like, overall, is like California basketball considered pretty high up relative to other places in the country? Because you guys run a lot of stuff and you run it fairly well. And it's 3-4 games into the season at this point. So could you talk about what those particular practices look like when you're focusing on yourself? Like, are they a lot of small-sided games? Are you trying to create advantage and maintain it? Like, what are you guys doing to implement so many different sets so early in the season?
Yeah. So one, the SCIAC and the Northwest Conference are great basketball. We always feel like we don't get the love we deserve because we're kind of on an island out here on the West Coast as far as Division III basketball. Division III basketball has so many great programs in the Northwest, in the Midwest, and I mean, so many great teams. And then we're a little bit on an island out here with the SCIAC and then the Northwest Conference. But last year, team out of our conference was in the Sweet 16, Pomona Pitzer. We always beat each other up in the first couple rounds of the NCAA tournament out here with Whitman, Whitworth, and then winners from our conference, where a lot of times 2 or 3 of those teams are ranked in the top 16, 20 in the country, but beat each other in the first round. So shout out to the West Coast Division III basketball for sure.
Well, I've looked at a few through these run it backs, and I'm, like I said, I'm not exaggerating. There's some good basketball going on out there for sure.
Appreciate that. So yeah, to your point though about sets and getting guys on the same page, we do love to run a lot of sets. Our head coach, he loves sets. We did run, it's no secret, last couple of years we're running the European flow offense and a lot of various counters and whatnot, and we just drill it all the time. I mean, every day there's a mixture of 5-on-0, 5-on-5. For the sets, this is the first game of the year, and it's funny, you texted me last night about, hey, you guys running a lot of stuff, you guys look good, and I watched the game yesterday too, going, oh my gosh, we look terrible, but it's the first game of the year, and 4 new starters, so you give yourself a little leeway. But we love 3-on-3. We teach a lot through 3-on-3, through the small-sided games, on half of the court or whatnot. We do a lot of practices where we build from 1-on-1 to 5-on-5. So we'll do our dynamic warm up, whatever it is. We'll start with 1-on-1 full court, up and back. As players, it's the worst drill in the world. They hate it. I hated it as a player. But up and back, learning how to guard the ball full court. And then we'll build to 2-on-2 or 3-on-3 closeouts and have to stop 3 in a row, and then sometimes we'll do 4-on-4, but then we'll build into our 5-on-5. And so within all of those things, though, we're always teaching from the actions that are built within our offense. So the 3-on-3, we're going to start with, a side ball screen with shake action behind, and we're going to play from that because we're going to see that a lot in our offense, or whatever it happens to be, to try to rep it early in the season.
So sort of going from general to specific of, with the scouting process and how you prepare and all that, what did you sort of identify as your main advantages for this game? And, a lot of the time announcers talk about like keys to winning. What did you think going into this were your strong suits, and how were you going to approach them?
Yeah, we thought a key was that they didn't know who the hell any of our guys were. So they didn't know how to scout us.
Right, for sure.
We had 4 new starters. They didn't have any stats on them. So we we did look at that as an advantage, because otherwise we felt like we were the underdogs going into this game because of how good they were, of how many guys they had coming back. And we just didn't know our team. We just didn't know how guys would respond to pressure or a real game experience. So, our advantages, we had some guys we knew were good players, guys that ended up being all conference guys. But as far as looking at the game going, okay, here's our real advantage. We did want to try to pound the ball inside. We felt like we had a little bit of a size advantage, especially we posted a lot of our guards last year. We would do that a lot. We posted our point guard quite often because he was our best passer. So we wanted to try to do some of that. But honestly, we just wanted to play hard, kind of try to exert a little bit of our will from the defensive and offensive end, and just see what our guys were like on the floor.
So I would assume that the answer to this is yes, there were adjustments that really stick out. But I mentioned in what I sent you, from what you sort of put down on paper and what you prepared for, we all know there's a point sometimes in certain games where we're like, okay, that's out the window. Let's try something new here. And you mentioned that you had 4 new starters coming in. What sort of adjustments stick out in your mind? Was there a point where you kind of went away from your game plan, or do you feel for the most part you adhered to your game plan? And if you went away from it, how accurate or inaccurate was your scout in your mind now in 2020 hindsight?
For sure. Looking back, it was interesting looking back at the game myself yesterday, at knowing who our guys ended up becoming later in the year and what we were trying to do earlier on. Hindsight's 2020, but we probably would have ran certain things differently or guarded differently, knowing how certain guys could or could not guard. So for sure. But at the time, we stayed pretty close to our game plan. The one thing that was difficult for us as we go through this game is they made some great adjustments that we just didn't have a great answer for. So, we were really trying to really intent on no middle, get our rotations, make them have to skip it and play through the backside. And in the beginning, they had some specific actions we were very concerned about as far as their kind of motion concepts, and we went over that a lot. But later in the game, they found kind of a weak spot in our defense where they just kept throwing it to an elbow and being able to play off of some elbow action, which, when you're trying to no middle everything and you get the ball, that's just it takes kind of away our advantage defensively when the ball's at the elbow and they're running split cuts or whatnot. So I thought that was something they did very well. That kind of took us out. I wouldn't say took us out of our game plan, but made it more difficult.
I have a very specific question that is not on what I sent you. So it's okay if you whiff on it a little bit. Don't worry.
I love the hot seat. Let's do it. Yeah.
So I played no middle for 2 years when I was at York University as a coach. And I remember something that we struggled with as a coaching staff was how hard we wanted to guard the slot to slot pass. Like how high up the floor did we want to deny? How much did we want to turn the ball handler and prevent them from making that? And how far up did we want to pressure them? You mentioned that elbow pass. I think that's a bit of a derivative from what I'm talking about. What, if any, conversation did you guys have on that factor in terms of allowing that slot to slot second side pass?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we tried to steal that if we could.
There you go. All right.
Because, and I'll go back a step. I was super fortunate 3 years ago. I think I might have told you this, but when Texas Tech went to the championship game, so when they were in the Sweet 16 and Elite 8, they were out in Southern California for those 2 games, and they practiced in our gym. So as soon as Texas Tech won their second round game, I sent an email to them and said, hey, our gym, literally our gym is around the corner from the Honda Center where they play the Sweet 16 games. And I knew they would be staying down the road. So, I emailed Texas Tech, and at the time in that quad was Texas Tech, Gonzaga, Michigan, and Florida State. I emailed all 4 of them. I heard back from 2, Gonzaga and Texas Tech, and they both practiced in our gym. Nice. And the only caveat I said was,
I got to watch.
I get to stay in the gym. Yeah, exactly. And they were like, for sure. Sounds good. So I got to see 2 days of Texas Tech's practice, and that was really eye-opening. Chris Beard is the real deal, as I don't need to tell you that. Everybody knows that. But I mean, they really do a great job in practice. Gonzaga did a walkthrough, so they didn't do quite as much on the court stuff. But, watching them, Texas Tech going back for 2 days, how they, and their no middle, worked with angles, where they tried to deny, where they tried to exert pressure, where the rotations were coming from, was a huge influence on, what our mindset was. And obviously we're dealing with different athletes at the Division III level, but the concepts we tried to still take. So to your point, we wanted, the way the defense is set up, if you're making it very hard to go middle and you have good ball pressure, we wanted the guy, and we wanted that reverse pass to either be stolen or to have to be caught 30 feet from the basket. Like, we wanted to make the reversal very difficult. The pass we were okay with on a reversal was, a drive towards the baseline and a skip over the top, because that's what you're trying to force and make other teams play from. So yes, we tried to steal or deny, unless there was some sort of scout thing saying, hey, let's sag off this guy for other reasons we might have.
Love it. Topically, what are your philosophies last season on how many to the glass and pace of play? Like, what did you guys want to play? And then how did those overall philosophies factor into this specific game?
Yeah, we send 3, sometimes 4 to the glass. And that's a big emphasis. Like, if we don't get the 3 or 4, our head coach will lose his mind. So those guys learn to go to the glass. Usually got one guard back, but that's a big thing for us to get bodies to the glass. And we don't really tag up. I mean, I love some of that stuff. I've learned a lot about the tagging up system, over the course of the pandemic, and I love that stuff. Didn't have that in as the last couple of years, but sorry. Yeah. So we are sending 3 to 4, depending on where that 4th one is, to the glass hard. And then earlier in the season too, we 2-2-1 pressed back into our no middle switching matchup defense. And so, not really
about that a little bit. Actually, there's some film in there that I just wanted to ask you a couple questions for sure.
So I'll stop there then. I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah, for sure you did. In terms of rotations, did how you manage them change throughout the season? Specifically for this game, are you going in with like a rotation plan, or do you guys kind of do it on feel based upon what you're seeing in matchups, etc.?
Sorry, you're talking about substitution rotations.
Yeah, exactly. Like, do you come in with like a depth chart and you're like, this guy's going to play from 7 to 3, or are you like, all right, well, I don't know about Dan right now, I think I got to get him out, or nope, we got to get Dan in right now because he's the right matchup?
Yeah. So this early in the season, perfectly honest, we had no idea how many or who we were really going to play. I mean, it goes back to, we had a lot of new guys. And so, there were times we were looking down the bench going, okay, let's throw this guy in the first half and see what he does. And maybe he'll make a shot. We did have an injury that took place right before the game of a guy that was going to be in our top 9 or 10. And actually a guy that ended up, he was never able to play the whole season, which was a tough thing for us. A kid, 6'4" shooter for us, ended up hurting his back in warmups of that game, couldn't really go. And then he ended up being out the whole season from it. I mean, just kind of a freak thing, which ended up kind of hurting us overall, not having another shooter on the floor. So that did shake things up right before the game. But, to be honest, we knew probably about 10 guys we wanted to get in. And then we knew there were a couple other guys that if the game went well, we were going to try to get a little bit of playing time. But the game was so close the whole time, we kind of stuck to our top 10. An interesting thing is we started at the 4-man that night, a kid that would end up being our starting point guard. And we thought earlier on that he was going to be a better 4-man for us than point guard. Right. And we did play him back and forth 1 and 4 all year, but we started him at the 4. And then eventually 2 or 3 games later, he ended up taking over at the point for us.
Nice. Forward. I like it. All right. So in game, talking about like what you guys are tracking on the side, what's important to you from the box. Like, I like to specifically talk about the halftime mark a lot of the time. So, I mean, at the half, you guys are down 2 points and you got 2 guys on the other team. Jordan Thomas has 11. Leighton Kingma has 13 at the half. You guys are down 5 rebounds and you've turned them over 8 times and they're shooting 35% from 3. What are you looking at? What's important to you guys? And then what changes do you make based upon either the box score at like end of a quarter, sorry, you guys play 2 halves, end of a half, or from what you're tracking on the sidelines? What changes do you implement from that kind of stuff, and how important are the different things to you?
Yeah, no, great question. I love hearing other coaches talk about this. By the way, we should be doing quarters here soon. I don't know why we're the last people in the
I'm
world.
sorry, you're the last people in the world.
Yeah. So as far as things we're looking at, always very concerned with a couple of things: our turnovers and then our rebounding margin. Rebounding margin, or percentage more than number of rebounds, obviously, because number of rebounds can be very predicated off of your pace and style of play. And
Sure.
we played a slower pace, and so our rebounds per game were always going to be lower. But really, we're looking at how we were rebounding the ball, and then if we were getting to the line. A big emphasis for us was to pound it inside, to get downhill, get to the rim. We did feel like we had a little bit of a size advantage, and so we were really concerned about that. Their 8 turnovers was a plus for us. They were a team that just statistically throughout the year just did not turn the ball over. And in the second half and overtime, I don't have the stats in front of me again, but they didn't very much. They had a senior point guard that just didn't turn it over. So the fact that we had 8 in the first half was kind of a gift for us. And so, I remember that halftime, us feeling like we were in a good spot based off of how the first half went. We were starting to get a sense of our flow offensively. And then we got a little bit more sense after one half as to those 2 guys you mentioned were great players, and maybe how we wanted to adjust a little bit to play them in the second half.
So what kinds of things are you saying, say, in the locker room at halftime to make actionable items out of what you've noticed? Like what are you saying to your guys, as opposed to, hey, we're getting beat on the boards? What's tangible? Like, hey, if you can get into this particular player more, we're probably going to pull out ahead here.
Yeah. So some tangible things. Great question. So one of the big things was angle, like your foot angles. So once we understood what kind of actions they were running against the type of defensive pressure and the defensive game plan we had, we were able to go through, okay, they're running these 4 or 5 things, and we're switching out like this right now. You need to switch out like this. And then when you switch out like this, that means they're probably going to do this. So here's where the backside rotation has to be. We were trying to give them some of those simple things. We were really focused on, we felt like in the first half, we were too easily letting them reverse sides of the floor. So like you mentioned earlier, do you want that pass to be reversed? And we talked a lot in the first half, I remember, and this was many games, of when you do switch out on a dribble handoff, or you do switch out on that side on ball, which they're running, to get your foot angle higher, no middle, and get your hand in the passing lane, so that pass back to the middle is so much harder. And we felt like in the first half, they were too easily able to swing from side to side, which puts so much pressure on your backside defense to constantly be rotating. So we were super focused on that, I remember.
Awesome. Love it. If anybody has any questions, please feel free. If not, I'm going to jump into a little bit of video here.
And this California sun.
I have a question, Manny, before you kind of get going.
Yeah, jump in.
Yeah.
So Coach, I've only coached for guys that believe in gap defense, and so here's my question, just about the ball reversals. I understand moving the ball side to side, moving the defense, but how does that just affect your defense? Why do you want to stop that side to side movement?
Yeah, great question. Thanks. So we just want to make everything difficult, and we feel like if you make, so many offenses are predicated on reversing it, at least a lot of good offenses, reversing it 2 or 3 times. And the analytics show that when you're able to reverse it 2 or 3 times and get multiple actions, your points per possession is through the roof. And so we always wanted to make the reversals very difficult because one, it screws up the timing. A lot of times running the sets, it's like if it's just a half second later or they're 2 feet out, we just always felt like those were small victories defensively.
Okay.
We weren't
That
all
makes perfect sense.
okay, but I would say this. So, this was the defense last year we ran. I don't know what we'll do if we ever play again here, but but it was a mixture of gap and denial. So we tried to deny the heck out of the reversal pass because we felt like that's how the defense was set up. But we were in a good gap on the strong side. So you have to have good gap coverage when you're.
So when you say reversal, you're saying from like top of the key to wing, or you're saying from like wing to top?
Yeah, so wing to top is, yeah. So either wing to top or slot to slot. We tried to make that a difficult pass. Yes, exactly. So changing sides of the floor.
Okay.
But
Okay.
if the ball was on the wing and there's a guy in the corner, the guy guarding the guy in the corner, he's sitting in a gap because we wanted to have good stunt and help coverage on, because you're basically forcing the ball there. So we didn't want to have too much denial. And then that really puts pressure on guys having to then rotate over. So that's also a little bit of, it depends on who the guy in the corner is. Like if it was a player for Caltech who could knock it down, whether you're there or not, we wouldn't leave that guy, but certain other guys we would, if that answers your question.
No, that makes perfect sense. So if the ball is on the right wing and I'm guarding the guy in the slot or top of the key, you're forcing him down anyway. So I don't need to be in the gap if I'm guarding the guy at the top. It doesn't make any sense anyway. That makes perfect sense.
That's a great, yeah, thank you for clarifying that, because that's exactly what we worked on all the time. It's like, you don't need to be in the gap because the guy guarding the ball should be doing everything he can to not let it get there. And we worked a lot on foot angles and backing up. And so
that makes perfect sense. That makes perfect sense.
Yeah, when it works, it's a beautiful thing. Believe me. When it
works,
doesn't, you're gonna have an aneurysm. James, you mentioned you have a question. Jump in, please.
Yeah. So how much you guys focus on like analytics as far as like scouting reports or anything like that? Obviously, us and analytics go hand in hand. So
yeah, I was gonna say, I mean, there's a range from Caltech to, I don't know where the bottom is, maybe Charles Barkley range where he doesn't believe in it. So yeah, we're on the I'd say the upper end of it, Jane. I mean, I'll say this, I look at it all the time. I wouldn't say everybody on our staff weighs it equally all the time, but I think like my job is always to figure out which analytics are most important, and then I kind of present them to our head coach. So I wouldn't say he's like a overly analytical guy. I am. So we meet in the middle, and I think it's a good balance.
Yeah. It's just interesting to see what others do in the conference,
For sure. Yeah. So, I mean, short answer is yes. And I'll say this too, like our head coach does take a lot into account, but there's like, there is a kind of gray area where it's maybe too much that you can get lost in it. And also like, hey, let's just get on the floor and play harder. So try to find that balance. Yeah. But I know you guys are the cream of the crop on that stuff for sure.
And don't let Dan tell you otherwise, but he's got great players over there. So
thank you.
The lights out at certain points. I think that with almost every staff at this point, there's sort of like a spectrum, like a stratification amongst the coaches, and there's one or two coaches who take it a bit more seriously, and one or two coaches who are still like play harder, be better type deal. And there's some sort of range in between where it's like that's where you end up playing in as to what you get to.
Well, I think it's a really great teaching tool, and I know I don't want to get sidetracked, but I think analytics is really helpful when you're trying to give someone like critical feedback as a coach, because you're able to go to a player and say, hey, I just don't feel this way about you. I just don't not like you. Yeah. But look at like you're not doing this well, and then here's why. Here's how we can help. I think it's one of the best teaching tools we have to use analytics in that way. And so from an interpersonal standpoint, really important, but then also scouting reports. I mean, for sure, we get into that as well.
For sure. Players feel quite a bit less attacked when you're like, hey man, this isn't me saying you're bad at something. The numbers are actually showing that you're not doing it well.
Yes. for sure.
If anybody else doesn't have anything, I'm going to jump into a little bit of film.
I think we got another question, Coach.
Yeah, so
Go ahead.
What's up, Coach?
How you doing?
Oh, we're good. We're doing great. My question is again on defense. I want to know just what are the best, I guess, drills? Are you drilling it through drills? Because I know a lot of coaches are big on shell and whatnot. And I guess it's a two-part question because I would like to know like the drills, how you teach them, or are you more likely to play 5-on-5 and just chiming in? And the second part to it would be, do you find that there are dangers to teaching too much about the help because the players don't focus on guarding the ball? You know, so I don't know if that makes sense. So yes, because that's a conversation. Like they over rely on the help. Like you're supposed to be here, you know.
Okay, two great questions. I'll take the second one first. And yes, we had to talk all the time to certain, like when you do the no middle and you're forcing one way, we had to very much stress, and we do have specific one-on-one drills where you're not letting the guy beat you baseline. Like you're guarding the ball, you're keeping it in front. You're just not letting it get to a certain place on the floor. And we did have some guys that love to play the Ole defense and look for where's the help and start rotating. And we, eventually those guys don't play as much, but we did have to really work on that. And so we have, for that, we had a 30-second drill where it was one-on-one for 30 seconds. The offense starts at the top wing, wherever you want them to start, and they take 2 or 3 dribbles and they try to get by their guy, and they back it back out to the 3-point line. And then they try to beat their guy again. And we did that drill every other day, and it was working on foot angles, keeping the ball in front based off of where it was on the floor. So that was a drill for one-on-one purposes. For the overall philosophy of the offense, we did a few different breakdown drills specific to actions that we would face. So like we had a drill that we stole from Tom Thibodeau. We called it our Chicago drill, and it was basically 2 guys are on a team, and they had to, for 30 seconds, they had to have perfect defense guarding on-ball screens at one wing, and then at the top, and then the other wing, and you had live offensive guys and partners trying to score against them. And we would do it where we'd all have a whistle. We'd hit the 30 seconds, throw it to a random player on the perimeter. His partner would sprint out to the on-ball. And if we didn't have good enough hand action, if the guy in the switch spot wasn't high enough, if the angles weren't good, we'd blow the whistle. They'd have to start over at 30 seconds, go touch the baseline, and go back out. And so that was a drill that really focused our guys in on the importance of certain angles and things like that. So I hope I'm kind of answering your question a little bit.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, and I've got more if we want to talk. Off. Anybody can email me, and I can give you some of our specific drills. James, maybe not you, but I can give you guys some specific drills, James, in our conference that we do. Actually, it's fine. They're just drills. You guys beat us anyway, so. But I hope I answered a little bit there. Okay.
Awesome. Anybody else? Anything? Appreciate you guys. Let me just jump in here. Let me get set up a little bit. So, Dan, I actually did them chronologically in the game as opposed to like grouping them, which is what I normally do. Okay. So there might be some things where it's like, hey, we spoke about this a little bit earlier, so I'll skip that clip now type deal. Are we good with this size, or do you need me to go full screen? I just kind of lose my notes when I go full screen, so.
I'm good there.
Perfect. Let me get you going here. All right. This is, I believe, the first play of the game, and for you guys. And I was just like, I mean, with all of these, basically no right answer, no wrong answer. Just basically want to do a film session with you. What do you see? What did you do well? What would you do different, etc. type deal.
Okay.
So, I mean, like a 1-4 high set into a ball screen, and then you get a cross screen, down screen action happening for anybody who's listening afterwards. End up with a great shot in the corner. So, I don't know, like, is it playing smooth for you, first of all?
So, yeah, I got it. Thank you. Yeah, that's an opening set of ours based off of our European flow offense. So, if you want to, can I have you pause it? or do you want to run? Yeah. So we love this set. We run variations of this throughout the year, but basically out of the Euro flow offense, but we put our shooter, our best shooter, the kid who set the cross screen that comes up for the shot, he was a conference player, shot at 46% from three. I mean, he really could knock it down. So we like to put him in screens all the time, especially cross screens, screen to screener action. So yeah, European flow offense. And instead of just the normal 45 cuts or the normal action, in this case, now we have a screen to screener action to the top. Hey, for the first play of the season, honestly, not bad.
Right here is your screen to screener action coming up.
Yeah. So, not bad. The screen's at a decent depth. I mean, I would have liked him to get a little bit lower, but then, just a good decision by our shooter here to find the extra pass in the corner.
Bang. Yeah, I'll take that for the first play. I'm going to stop the share.
Yeah, I was thinking we were going to the Final Four after that first play. Hey, we got a team here.
Can we just do this like every set the rest of the way, please? Like,
yeah,
I'll be happy with that. So then this is their first play. First of all, we're gonna omit your 2-2-1. I got another clip of it afterwards that I want to ask you some of the principles about. But basically, they run a high split action, and they ran this a lot throughout the game. So once we finally get into the front court here, it's a bit of a longer clip. The guy from the point makes a point to wing pass and then comes in, sets an away screen up top. Pretty common split that you would see a lot. Does it make your scouting report? How did you want to defend it? And how do you feel you defended it in this clip with the back door?
Okay, yeah. So we went over that a lot because they did do that. That's a staple of their offense, to reverse it and set the screen at the nail and then have a back cut or a curl or a flare. I mean, they would do a lot of different stuff off of it. And we went over this a lot. Were we going to switch it? Were we going to jump on the top side? How we wanted to try to guard it. And so that was a big point of emphasis, to take that away, and then also to try and deny the pass back to the point guard, going back to the denial thing, because we felt like if we could eliminate their nice action from here, then eventually it would flow either into something more beneficial for us, either a ball screen or maybe an ISO situation later in the clock. So we spent a lot of time on that little screen action, and it looks very simple, but it's really hard to guard. And they're so patient, and they know the cuts and the reads, that we spend a ton of time on that initial action.
What I find very interesting about basketball is, for all the talk and all the analytics, it's still really hard to guard like a simple split cut effectively, right? Like it's still really hard to guard like the most basic actions. Like we used to call it quick, where it's just a wide pin down, and you have to figure out how to play that when you have a shooter and a big involved, or two shooters involved, or whatever it is. Like just simple actions a lot of the time would destroy certain teams, and it'd be like, wow. Like, well,
and that's a tenet that my philosophy when we're teaching our offense and we're teaching reads is we tell our guys the defense is always wrong. They can never be right. Like there's always something that's built into our offense that they want to play us like this. Okay, then we're gonna go here. They want to play us on the top side. Okay, then we'll fade here. I mean, that's actually something my brother played college football, and he was a wide receiver, and he would say that was the same thing. The defensive back is always wrong. Like they can only force you one way. They can only take away one thing, and you just have to learn what the other thing is. So I
actually really like that philosophy. I'm going to incorporate that statement. They are always wrong.
like there's, for sure, like when you get a guy up in your grill and he's taking away your dribble, I mean, that makes it hard. But as far as just your general flow of your offense, and I think that's a way to build in reads to what you do offensively is, okay, they're doing this, then this is what we've worked on. This is our other read.
I have one more question about this clip, going back a little bit here. So when they get it and they make the penetration here, you mentioned earlier talking about maybe stunting off of the ball side. Do you guys typically help off of ball side, or would your help come from the other side in an ideal world here?
Okay, so yeah, looking at this clip, and I think this is a poor job defensively for us. I think this is where, as we got better later in the year, not to talk about the podcast that I do, but we had Liam Flynn on the Slapping Glass podcast.
Sorry,
Okay.
I'm going to stop for a second.
No.
And I'm going to shamelessly plug. Everybody should go check out Slapping Glass. It is one of the best resources going on. I will put a link in the description. Also,
Nice.
if you have not signed up yet, go and get on their newsletter as well. They work really hard and produce incredible content. So please check it out.
Thank you. I appreciate that. If people are wondering why I have this Slapping Glass logo behind me, it's also so you don't see my loft right now. But what I was talking to Liam Flynn, we had Liam Flynn on, and one of the points I really liked I took away from his conversation was that teaching you guys the difference between line drives and wide drives. Is it a wide drive or is it a line drive? And knowing the difference and knowing your help differences. And so in this situation here, this would be more of a wide drive where the guy's not getting downhill to the rim. So as the ball is going wider towards the side of the floor, our help should have been moving back towards his man, giving less help, where here he just kind of overstunts, and then it ends up leading to, still good defense. We have 3 guys contest a shot with vertical arms, but a tough shot for sure. But to your point, I think that was over help looking back.
Sounds good. Next one's just you miss, you guys bust out, and through transition you flow right into ball screen continuity. I think this is a little bit more of the traditional middleman through type deal. So you get an empty side, a lift, and then middleman through on the other side. Unable to turn the corner, you punch the ball into the post, and you get a pretty good look at the rim, and then he gets an offensive rebound, puts it back. So I'll let it play while you talk, and if you need me to freeze it anywhere, give me anything that you see in it that you like, don't like, etc. Yeah.
So, and the European ball screen, we actually flow into this pretty nicely here for the first couple possessions, and you can kind of just see the normal motion. A scouting report going into that game was, we thought, and it was true, they were hard hedging that ball screen on the side.
Right.
And so we have different calls for how we want that guy setting the first ball screen, what we want him to do. So there's times where we want them to slip the first ball screen, because to slip and see if we can play from the first side, or slip and see if we can then reverse it. And so I know going into this game, we talked as a pressure release, we wanted our first ball screener to slip into that space. So different reasons for that, but we'd also have times where we wanted to actually set the screen, or we'd have a pressure release where he would pop out instead of set the screen, and we get a reversal. So here you can see he slips the screen. This kid's a sophomore starting his first game. I would have liked to have seen him slip it better, harder, kind of, get into the space better, but you can kind of see our game plan here where we tried to slip him. So that way you can run it now. You can see that he'll be open for a second on that pop or on that slip. Actually, they don't hedge there. They're hedging certain other times, but
we do hedge a great deal in this game.
They do a lot.
Yep. I just want a quick laugh on the first slip. I actually, in my mind, I'm thinking about your videos and how in Premiere you've managed to get this whole part illuminated. I'm sorry, I'm not as high tech as you are, but this is where he should be slipping into. And I just want it to be illuminated right now as you're talking.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you. I know, but you can see both of our posts are slipping, and that was something that we wanted to do. And eventually throughout this game, when they are hard hedging, we would hit the slip, and we wanted to play through those guys on the slip and make them be in rotation. So what I liked about that set, honestly, or that action, was we flowed really nicely into the Euro ball screen, just kind of from a broken break.
Definitely does not look like second or third game of the season. You guys look like you're in fine form there, in my opinion.
Yeah, at this point, I'm feeling good as an assistant.
This is one more of their high split actions. So you can see sort of your 2-2-1 back to man matchup. And then I think the reason why I put a second one in was that the result is a little bit different. And I think the way that you play it is a little bit different, where you actually get to switch instead here.
And can you go back a little bit, Mentally? Because I'd like to make a point about press, which really wasn't a press on this possession. This was something we did talk about at halftime. You can see, look at how we just fall back. We talked in timeouts and at halftime, we want to get up and at least make a pass, because what was happening was it was just too, like, they figured out, well, they're not really pressing, let's just bring the ball up. And so we worked on that a lot, where we wanted them to at least make one pass backwards, and then we would match up into our man to take off some more time. But like this possession here, it's like, why press, really? I mean, what are you doing? We're not putting any pressure, we're not forcing anything. So that's one thing I would say about our zone there.
So
and then
about that, I'm sorry to just jump in there.
No, go ahead.
My clip about your press is actually number 6, which is where I was going to ask you about it. But I'm a proponent of showing full court, even if you're not pressing sometimes, and still coming back, because I think psychologically that does something to an offense that makes them play slower, makes them think about things, as opposed to like, let me just walk it up and in my mind plan out what's happening. So I found it interesting that there are definitely times in this game where you're pressing for an advantage as opposed to pressing for show. And I wanted to ask you about that. So thanks for bringing that up. I actually really like that you mentioned that.
No problem. And we wanted to later in the game get the ball out of their point guard's hands, who has it now, because he ran the show, wouldn't turn it over. So we wanted our guy to get up, turn him once they got it out of his hand, then we'd be in the man and have somebody else initiate the offense. So, but this clip, as we get into it too, we do guard it differently. We gave our guys the options to either switch or not switch based off of this stuff here. And so we end up switching it. But what I like, to Coach Taylor's question earlier about the reversal, this is where we wanted the ball reversed. This is where, we really wanted to deny that first reversal pass back and make them catch it where they catch it. Obviously an advantage for us. So our guy does a good job of, making it tough on them. And now they're running their offense from half court,
right,
with 14 seconds on the shot clock.
Love it. Okay, so post reactions to cuts. I noticed during this game, you did mention that you wanted to post for an advantage. You get into a little roll replace action here, and then you end up putting it inside, and you guys do what we would call an uplock screen here. So your first guy who's in the slot goes opposite block, and then your second guy who's on the weak side slot comes to the ball side slot off of an exchange cut and then an uplock screen. So I've noticed throughout the game, you have a lot of different actions when you throw the ball in the post, how much you work on that. And most importantly to me, and I don't know if this is pertinent to other players, but like the gentleman who starts in your right slot here ends up going opposite. Do all of these counters, reactions that you have, and I think I have one more clip that looks at a couple of different things. Do all of these happen naturally, or are they play calls?
Okay, so yeah, great questions.
Sorry,
They're
I asked a
natural.
lot of complex questions that are multiple.
No, this is the good stuff. They're all actions, and so technically, last year we would always have the highest number dive to the dunker spot, no matter where they were on the floor. So technically, we're entering it to our 5 at that point. So our 4 on the catch is diving to the dunker spot. The 4 in this situation happens to be where he was at that slot. So that's why he's diving opposite. And then the other 2 guys are going to get some sort of split cut or some sort of kind of screen actions for each other on the backside. So if you rewind it just a touch to where it first entered, right there is good. So if our 4-man happened to be in the corner, he would corner cut to the dunker spot, and the other 2 guys would screen for each other. If he happened to be at the wing, he would dive from the wing spot. So we just wanted our highest guy remaining to dive. When we posted our point guard, the 5 would always dive, and the 4 would have action with the other 2 on the perimeter. So, and then we'd spend a lot of time on reading those cuts on the perimeter. We would change some things here and there throughout the year very subtly, but that was the basic action. So there's other times where a different guy dives because a different number is diving. Those other guys are screening for each other. One thing we're really big on is notice where he catches the ball off the block. We teach our bigs, if you don't have a piece of the paint when you catch it, to turn and face and take a look inside of what's going on. So this kid here is a sophomore, going to continue to be a really good player for us, but see how he turns and faces. And we teach that all the time because we want it to slow their minds down, and we want them to make better decisions. And we've had guys get in trouble where they start, and certain guys can do this, but certain guys, when they're trying to back a guy in from 15 feet and read the cuts and not offensive foul, we've just found more success when guys can see what's in front of them. So he doesn't have a piece of the paint. He does a good job. He turns, he's looking at the action, and then he can make a move and, get to the rim or whatever he's going to do.
Awesome. Love it.
And I'll say this too. I don't want to give away all our secrets, but we have a rule. It's called the midline principle.
So I'll get to
when you catch it on the post right there, you have to get to the midline to make a move. You've got to get to the middle of the floor. So if he were to take that hook there, that'd be a no-no for us. He's got to keep going to the midline, because going back to analytics, a left or right-handed jump hook from 7 feet at the midline, point blank, the percentage that goes in as to suppose if he took the jump shot from the block is a decent difference. And so now, does that always happen? No, but we demand that the guy gets to the midline. Now, if he can rip baseline to go, that's another thing. But if he's going to go middle, he's going to back guy down. Like, it's a toughness thing too. It's like, keep getting there, keep going, keep getting to that spot, and take that high percentage look.
I have a former player that I'm going to show those 6 seconds of this to, because it was a consistent debate with us about, like, for me, the way I was taught it when I was at my first college station was that, like, basically middle is superior to baseline. And if you can get to the front of the rim along the rim line, then you've done your job as a big. Well, I have a big that just really doesn't believe that at all. And
yeah,
it was a consistent battle all the time. Like, okay, but could you just do it anyways? Like, I mean,
our guys hate it. Trust me, our guys hate it. I mean, it's not like, because they literally blow the whistle, stop at practice. No, you need to get one dribble further. No, one dribble further.
right.
We're actually putting an edit together for slapping class of European guys doing that, because they do. They play nice and slow. Excuse me. They get to the midline, and better advantages from there. So
I agree.
Anyway,
going to your 2-2-1 here. This was a different clip. This was kind of where I was going to bring up the reversals versus the playing the fallback type deal and ask you about that. I think that's kind of asked and answered at this point, that obviously you are doing both during the game. Maybe if you want to talk briefly about, like, your concepts of having to match up out of it, like, who's first line, who's second line, where are they going to, how are they finding their guys type deal. I think that might be beneficial.
For sure. Yeah. So the 2-2-1, we had our 3 and 4 up. We want our bigger guys up on the ball, our 1 and 2 middle, and our 5 back. And we did find that advantageous because a lot of teams would come down and get right into a ball screen. And so you're switching back to better matchups when you have your big guarding their point guard in the press, and then they get into a ball screen, and then the big switches on to the big. So we found some advantages having our bigs up. And, if you can kind of see on the screen, we had a bunch of just 6'4" guys last year that they were just all 6'4", 6'3". I mean, we had 6'7", 6'8" guys too, but we could switch a lot of stuff and not worry about it. So that was a luxury last year, which guy was in which spot. So the 2-2-1, it was the second pass, or once they get past half court, you're just matched up to the closest guy. So
love it.
Here, though, that is when they start to run some of their good split action, which caused a lot of problems. That last clip, but we can move on.
So I would call this, or was introduced to this as the 60 series. I see it run by the Raptors 905 a lot, and the Raptors as well. And basically, it's just continual stagger screens at varied angles. So
Yeah.
you get a stagger away as we've dribbled to the left wing. Then there's the reverse pass. Then you get the stagger down and continue it. And then there's the stagger sort of along the baseline as you go. It's good action. I like it. Talk to me about implementing it, what you're looking for. Are you happy with it at this point in the season, et cetera?
Yeah. So yeah, this is a triple screen, and our screen areas aren't great right here. The last two screens should be a little more along the baseline, but not bad. Yeah, we're trying to run 3 screens, and at the end of this and later in the game too, it does end with a cross screen,
right,
and then a flash by our 2 big that's kind of finishing the action. And you can see I'm trying to start to do that while our point guard gets downhill. You can see our one post going across while he gets into the paint. But yeah, we run it. So this set has been good to us over the years for various things. We'll add actions onto the triple screens away. It's also a nice action to run to eat up clock. So coming down late game, and you can run this action to get the ball back into your point guard's hands, and then run it, flow into a high on ball or whatever you want to flow into. But it makes them guard. Honestly, our coach likes he likes to run this when he can tell the other teams is on the ropes and they're tired defensively, and he says, let's just put them in this action and make them have to guard a bunch of screens and kind of kill their defensive will in a sense. So it's a nice action to build off of, and it's just a tough action to guard overall.
When you're implementing a set like this, teaching patience is key in getting to the right spots on the floor. What are some of the teaching cues that you might use? Like you mentioned location on the floor, but like for me, I don't think I love this drive by your point guard while the cross screen is supposed to be happening, because I think the cross screen actually ends up on his drive line. So are there certain points within the action that you're like, hey, probably shouldn't be looking for this, should be looking for that instead? Like, what are sort of your teaching cues that go into that?
Yeah, no, good point. So like the teaching point of this play is the point guard. So the 2 bigs should be along the baseline at this last screen. If the point guard can turn the corner and get downhill, the posts don't go screen for each other.
Right.
It's if the point guard catches it and stands up and looks, then the action begins. And so this being the first game of the year, the guys they're just running the play. They're not really reading it. So we did get better at that later in the year, knowing, hey, did he catch and get downhill? Then don't screen, just pinch in, and we'll play through that. So you're correct there.
Awesome. This is a defending clip. So you guys miss a shot, they bust out other direction. And I think my question had to do with who your most important guy or your low man is on this drive. I think you ultimately end up helping from the ball side. So reversal pass to the wing, and then a drive middle. This player is basically wide open. The guy who's guarding him is buried. And I think he's trying to jump to his own and take a charge. Is this just a no help scenario that the player is trying to recover to their own? And if they were in position, would you be helping from this side or from the other side?
Yeah, this is a terrible defensive possession. Geez.
Sorry.
But you can see the guy tries to take a charge. He's a great pointer in this possession. He's pointing out where people should be, but he's not actually getting to the spot. We in the scouting report, so this player with the ball here is a non-shooter, terrific driver, great at the rim. I mean, he was unbelievable player for them, but he was a what we consider a gap guy, but not that kind of a gap. So I don't know. This looks like, to me, looking back, some confusion between these 2 players who should be guarding the ball. Now, that said, if he was being guarded in a normal situation, we should have the guy who's guarding the corner. Last year, our defensive plan was, he should be the helper.
Right.
Yeah. So it kind of a scramble situation, but the ball is there. He should at least have a foot in the paint. So if we did have a guy guarding the ball, in reality, they both should be there to come in and help on that. but
When
it's
I
kinda hard.
played
Go ahead.
sideline, when I played sideline baseline, we called so I've often heard them called the MIG at this point, most important guy. We would call the MIG base. So he would have to, depending on scout, either have lane line or rim line already. So
Mhm.
I mean, doesn't translate well to the next level, but it's a common theme in college, I think, to pull them that far over.
For sure. Yeah. So both those guys should be far over. Just a very bad defensive possession right here.
Sorry. So then
It's okay.
my
It's
quick
good to look at.
question would be, how do you address something that's a complete eye twitch moment? Do you implement much in terms of coaching on the fly in games, or do you leave it to a timeout, or do you leave it for film afterwards? Like, how would you deal with it with this gentleman?
Well, if it's able to be remedied right then and there, try to do that. So if it's just a pure so I guess there's two different ways. If it's the guy's not playing hard, then the sub's probably coming in for him. That's the remedy.
Right.
It's a effort thing. That's normally not the case. But if it's just a matchup problem, yeah, I'll either try to just quickly, while the guy's shooting the free throws, bring him over and say, hey, what's your question on that? Why we're not better there? Or in a timeout, or halftime, wherever. But yeah, no, it's an active remedy type of thing during the game, especially if it's like a problem like this, where hey, we got to just match up.
For sure. Sorry, Dan, I'm just noticing, I want to be respectful of your time. We're a little bit beyond the hour. I asked you for an hour. Are you good for a few more clips?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Appreciate you. This one, I think, was just the pass that I ended up really liking. So, back into your continuity type action, middleman through, you get your cross screen, down screen action, and then just a beautiful look off of the down screen, slip out, left-handed pass. I think I just wanted to throw it in to give the guy some credit on how much I like the play. But would this be a look that you teach your guys to look for, or is this just kind of happening off the fly? And do you notice anything in there that you like otherwise?
Yeah, no, it's a great pass. That kid was a freshman point guard for us last year, so he can do that. He was a good passer. But that is something out of this set that we would teach. So this is a European offense flow with a variation with the screen-to-screener action by the shooter, similar to what you showed earlier.
Right.
And what we would teach the guy setting the last down screen, because that the shooter that was coming off for the shot, like I said, he shot 45% from three, is our best player. He'd always get guys stunting towards his shot or helping. We would teach the down screener, as soon as, if you feel your man step to help, or if he's even with you, it's a quick slip to the rim. So right. He does a good job here. They stunt to help, and he gets this slip to the basket, which is just a nice pass as well.
I love that on your help side, you keep your man high at the wing. Last year, I made the mistake of playing out of corners a lot. And I think that if we ever get back on the court, I'm going to do more of keeping it high. Obviously keeps the help high and allows for this whole area of the floor for this beautiful pass.
No, it's a great read, great pass. We spent a lot of time on getting out of screens with our bigs. I think that's a really important offensive concept to teach and if you watch some of our film, you wouldn't know, but I think it's so important to teach the action. And then we try to drill slipping, flipping a screen, changing the angle, holding it, screen to post, so we tell our bigs, you should never set a screen and then just be lost. Like, it's screen to something all the time, because all the good stuff in offensive sets happen like right after the action. The good teams, you don't always get a back door. It's the advantage you create. So like, this is just a good example of him understanding, okay, I screen, I didn't really touch him. I can feel my man's creeping out. So it's a hard slip. And so this was a good example of, I guess, that teaching point that we try to get across.
Love it. You get some Spain/stack action happening in here.
Yep. Ooh, that's terribly run though.
So give me some of your thoughts in terms of, so the big thing for me was the spacing of everything happening. But maybe, beyond talking about how it's run, maybe a little bit of the play after the play, because so we had a few teams in my conference run variations of Spain this past year. And I find that if you can defend the initial action fairly well, a lot of teams don't really have a play after the play. So I'm wondering sort of what you go into, what you're looking for after that initial action.
Yeah, so we definitely didn't want to run this for a fall away jumper by a guy shooting 25%. I'll tell you that, but that's what we got. And so you just get back on D. But so Spain action is really hard to teach. Like, Spain action is very hard to guard, but it's also takes time to teach offensively because there are a lot of bodies and a lot of reads within it. So, going back, first game of the year, freshman point guard running it. I think he was so scared he just wanted to get the ball out of his hands instead of actually reading or running the play. But we spent a lot of time on the Spain action, first off with the screener, the back screener. So once again, this is our best player in the back screen action, and when to set the screen and when to slip out opposite. And so we use the lane line as a guide, saying, like, right there, as soon as you feel he's outside the lane line, and he should be hard popping opposite. And then our big is rolling instead of trying to stay and set the screen. So he kind of notices it to me a touch late here. So you can maybe roll it a touch farther, but he's kind of slow to get out of it. And they're able, they guard this pretty well. They show and have some good backside help. But we spent a lot of time on that first initial action. Also, too, like, our point guard is not aggressive in this at all. He just is kind of bring it to a side. And like I said, I don't know if he was his first game looking to, just get the ball up. But then also, I mean, look at how terrible that on-ball screen. Like, we could have screened him. Like, I would want our big to step a little bit higher, actually screen the point guard, and now you actually create an advantage instead of he kind of lets him go and he's able to recover back. That being said, we have automatics off of Spain. So we run Spain, we throw it back to the top, to the point. It should lead to a reversal or a duck inside, or look and see how do they guard it. Do we have an advantage? Did they switch? What did they do? So yes, we do have automatics off of it. And you can see this was we wanted to get the ball inside. So we reverse it and we're able to post. This was our 4/point guard. Does not get to the midline. Like I said, takes a fall away J. Much to the chagrin.
I was just gonna say, get to the rim line. We were just talking about it.
Yeah, he wasn't a fan of that. He wasn't into that this year. So
this is one more guarding the high split, ends up with a different action. I'll actually forward past this. This was a set that I liked. Again, sort of with continuity. I forget what I liked on this. Give me 1 second to play it through. Sorry. I think I just love that you ended up getting the shot out of it this time. So again, it's the continuity type action. You get some away cutting happening, and then the ball ends up being reversed, and here's your cross screen, down screen type action, but you end up with the jump shot out of it this time.
Yeah, and I'll say, our cross screen down screener goes too early in that clip. Like, you could see, he started to cut too early for the timing of it. But so this is where I think, teams can become harder to guard. This was an action that we ran ad nauseum all year, and it was a way just to see how teams played it, see how, if we got anything out of it. But what we started to teach our guard, who set the cross screen and then would get the pin down screen, he then had the ability to read whether he would actually stay and set the cross screen or he would just slip out off the top screen. And so here's a situation where he doesn't really set the screen, and we would tell him, if you feel like your man is there to help, don't stay and set the screen, just slip and come off the top. And so he doesn't really end up screening anybody because they're kind of zoning up this action now, and he's able to slip off the top for a good shot.
Yeah, like it.
Yeah.
Defending their away screen is my note. You guys are in your 2-2-1 that falls back. I don't think you force a pass out of it. And then What do we got here? The bump on the wide pin down was what I was looking at. So, how do you handle the reject out of this? So basically what ends up happening for anybody who's listening is the ball ends up with a 4 or 5 at the point, and there's just a wide pin down on one side, and then he rejects the cut up to the top, gets a backdoor cut out of it. Where would you help from typically, or how would you defend this? Does it make your scouting report this early in the season? All those kinds of fun things.
Yeah, I mentioned earlier when we were talking about how they did a good job where they started to get the ball to the middle of the floor and then run their split action, and that's hard to guard. And so this is an example of it that was just it's difficult. Normally we like to try to switch in that, like either a wide pin or that kind of split look where the guy's going to set the screen. We want the bottom guy to take the bottom cutter and the top guy to take the top cutter. So what they do a good job of is our guy gets too high after the initial switch, and this kid does a nice backdoor. Our bottom kid isn't, that could have been another situation where he took the second cutter again if we're really zoning it farther along in the season. But honestly, just a good read by the offense to get that backdoor. So later in the year, we would have been better probably guarding that stuff.
BT was asking, in that scenario, is the passer a shooter or a non-shooter? And then my question, I think, would also feed into that. You mentioned that he gets a bit too high in it. Would you be top blocking here based upon scout type deal, or is this just, in your opinion, probably a mistake? He's just gotten too high.
Yeah, I think it was more of a mistake. He got too high. We were, really emphasizing trying to deny easy passes. The guy who's making the pass was a non-shooter, and so it's a good pass by him. Sometimes with non-shooters, you can sag off and try to take away passing lanes, or you can get up and pressure them and try to turn them. Here we're trying to pressure them, and then our guy on the wing probably just jumps too high. We didn't work on top blocking last year. I don't think it's quite hit the Division III level as much as NBA Europe, and I like it a lot, but we didn't do that on purpose there.
All right. There's one more defending clip, and then I'll skip ahead to the end of the game so we can talk about that exciting finish a little bit, because that was
the
awesome.
Crazy finish.
But this one action by them I liked. Ends up being like they were going to get into a handoff. He keeps it and then just slips out and goes to the basket. I'm wondering sort of what you would like to see on that, how you would defend it normally type deal. So basically,
I'd like to,
pass
like
the elbow. He goes to screen away, and then he keeps it and attacks.
First of all, I'd like to see that play in our own playbook. That's a great set by them. I said it's really good. The keeping the dribble handoff or the fake dribble handoff, I think, is one of the more difficult things to guard with teams that just have a good feel and a good sense of it. When I watched that play, the one thing is the stance of our guy guarding the ball. I think early in the year, we were so much about, hey, let's work on no middle, be high, don't let it go back to the top. But where the ball is on the floor, and since his man has the ball, our guy guarding the ball should be square. And honestly, we got better at this later in the year, but when there's going to be any sort of dribble handoff action, he needs to take a step back to account for the fake or any sort of misstep. I mean, he's just too high that allows for that fake. I mean, that's what we would teach our big guys. If you feel your guy high on a dribble handoff, just fake it and go. And so offensive player does a good job. We get a decent contest by our, a decent vertical contest at the rim. So I like seeing that out of our help. But that was a mistake on the ball.
Alters the shot, ultimately ends up making a bigger guy miss. So it's a great contest for sure.
And we did a lot this year with the contest, with that exact action. We actually have a drill we stole from our volleyball program where our guys line up on one side, they sprint to help, and they just jump straight up in the air like Draymond Green, on a poster or something. We call it our verticality drill or whatever. And we do that a couple of times a week, working on not coming over and taking a charge, because honestly, sliding over, taking the charge within this charge circle or not is such a hard thing. And we always tell our guys, when in doubt, just jump straight up, because you won't get called for the foul, and you can contest. So he does a good job of that there.
Love it. So I'll get to the 3 end of game type scenarios here. So this is the first one. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the game is tied. This is the end of regulation. They have the ball. I can't tell what's on the clock because it doesn't really show from.
I know. Yeah.
From your film, but I'm assuming it's pretty low because it looks like regulation ends at the end of this clip, and it's an ATO for them. Like, they've called a timeout. You guys have come out. What have you talked to your guys about defending at this point? Like, what are sort of the things that you've said? And then I'll run the clip first, so maybe it'll refresh you as to what was happening.
Yeah. Let me watch it for a second. Yeah. Okay. You can stop it. So we talked at the timeout where you could tell that throughout the course of the game, they were getting comfortable and having success throwing it to number 5, to Jordan Thomas here at the elbow and letting him make a play. Great athlete, good finisher. And we just figured that's what they were going to do. And they did. So they run kind of a little clear out action for him. Foul, no foul. They didn't call the foul.
Yeah, I'm not saying anything. I didn't hear a whistle.
So we'll go to overtime. Sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. But yeah, I thought our guy did a decent job. You know, we told him, hey, they're going to ISO at the elbow. You know, stay in front. Don't foul, contest, and no foul. Play on.
Play on.
Let's go to OT.
All right, so then here we are.
And I want to give a quick side note here. I'm freezing my ass off during this game on the bench right now. I'm a Southern California guy, and we're up in the Northwest, and it's cold as hell. And I'm realizing, like, I was pissed a little bit about overtime because I was so cold on the bench and that I didn't bring a jacket. So, side note for the podcast.
Meanwhile, I'm Canadian, and I'd probably be laughing my butt off down there.
You guys have been sweating. Yeah, you guys have been taking clothes off. Okay,
so this is their last play in overtime. It's a baseline out from their side, so full court to go. And if I'm not mistaken, you guys are up 1 point at this point.
Yep, we're up 1.
And so, I mean, defending in the full court, what would you have liked to have seen versus what happened? All those fun things for sure.
I guess in a tough shot. I mean, they run basically the same type of set they did at the end of regulation, letting that kid ISO and get to his left hand. Would have liked to have seen a little more ball pressure, maybe in the backcourt, but at that point too, we were in the double bonus. That kid's a good free throw shooter. We're in the Northwest, their hometown. We didn't want to give the refs any chance to make any sort of foul call on a dumb play. So honestly, it's a great shot. I mean, kid going away from the basket, it's contested.
If you parallel it, it's pretty much the same shot that was at the end of regulation. He just makes a hell of a layup here, right? Like, that's a heck of a shot there. Contest. That's a left-handed shot going away from the rim. Good for him.
Yeah, so, no, I mean, that's a shot you just kind of give it to him. Say, hey, it's a great look, a great play there. So
for anybody who has not seen or is not familiar with this game, we got quite the ending here. If I am their team, I'm asking how this even happens. But basically here, after this make, we get into this, which is, again, an ATO, a 3 across line up with one person beeped. And
there's 3 seconds left. We're down 1.
3 seconds left. You're down 1. I've got a couple angles for you, gentlemen, just because this angle doesn't catch everything, but this is quite the finish. So your cameraman's a little bit late here, but you end up with that. And let me give you guys the 2 other angles I have. So here's this from Instagram, which will give you from the start, full court pass, drop off, layup, And I mean, that one's a little bit bright. So let's go one more look at it. And there you go. 3 seconds left. Overtime. Length of the floor, baseball pass, drop off, layup. So, coach, exactly as you drew it up?
Yes and no. I mean, that is a set that we work, an end of game set that we work on, weekly or every other day. Everybody has their end of game situations where you've got to throw it the length of the floor or whatever. And so, yeah, that's a play that we go over often. Not always drawn up quite like that. Normally that's drawn up. You guys can remember maybe Bryce Drew, Valparaiso hitting that game winner in the NCAA tournament years back where they threw it the length of the floor and then he hit the jumper. We call that home run. So we work on it a ton, the 3 across. And normally what it's for is to try to get a 3-pointer by one of your wings. And in that situation, that was actually the first option. We were trying to get it to where it's a catch and a quick look for a 3. We've had other sets in where at 3 seconds, you can kind of run more of a Christian Laettner type of set where you put your best player in the catch spot, let them catch and try to rip and get to the rim in a couple seconds. But there, we work a lot on the pass, where the pass has to be, the angle of the pass, and then how our guys come down and catch it. And then, honestly, the point guard streaking is the last option, but he just made a great play. And when you look back at I've looked back at the film a bunch, what happens is we tell our point guard, you're taking 2, so we slap the ball, you're taking 1 or 2 hard steps at the ball. And then as soon as it's released, then you're sprinting and taking off. We tell our wings the same thing. Take a step towards the ball, and then you're sprinting in the hopes that you just get the defense leaning ever so slightly to give you the advantage on the other end. And that's what happens. Our point guard takes a step at the ball. The man guarding him takes a step with him. And by the time, and then our point guard, very quick kid, takes off, and he just has enough of an advantage on the catch and the pass to beat him to the rim. And
hey, Dan.
A heck of a finish. Yep.
Hey, Mike here. I was going to ask, where are your wings starting, and what is the angle that you were discussing? Why do you believe it's so important? Because I assume you've seen film, so I was just asking.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Mike, for the question. We start the wings, and maybe Menelik, do you want to pull that? You want to pull it back up, and I maybe can explain it.
Is there one that is the best to you?
Probably the one on synergy for the alignment to start.
Sure. Synergy.
Okay, you can stop it right there. Yeah, so that's how we want to start to align. We want to go 3 across, basically at about the 3-point line to start. And all of our guys, you'll see the point guard. Maybe if you want to run it from there, man, you can see the point guard take a step, and you can see his man go with him, and see how right there. See how his man looks at the ball too for a second. I mean, this is the whole play right here. The defender guarding the ball just for a split second takes a look at the pass going full court and doesn't stay with his point guard, and then he's able to take off. So,
is your one player out of bounds?
I don't think so.
No, he's inbounds.
Okay,
Yeah,
I
they're
can't
both
tell
inbounds.
at court.
Okay, yeah.
But you can see, just like you're saying, you can see the couple steps that he has on him just by watching. Like, you're not catching him at that point.
No, that's the whole play right there. I mean, he falls asleep for a half second, and that's all it took. So we work a lot on the pass. So we call that guy in that spot the Tom Brady spot, and we have like a tryout with our guys to see who the best Tom Brady is. And so this kid was the best Tom Brady for us last year, where it's got to be, most guys can't make the overhead pass to the other side of the court. So it's got to be a one-arm pass. And what we work on is them throwing it high in the air with some loft, and we aim it. We want them to try to catch it right at the top of the 3-point line on the other side of the court. And we time it where our post starts at the bottom and our post is going to take a step or jab away, and then he knows the ball's going right to that spot, and so he's going to just get there like a receiver. And we work on them in practice, literally going up and jumping and catching it and coming down with two hands. And so this pass was a little off to the side, which actually worked out for us because it allowed our point guard to streak right down the middle. But maybe the other one now, Menelik, the Instagram one might show it better. But you can see our right there. So that's a decent catching area. It's where we want the ball going. He comes down, catches it, and we tell him, we work on, okay, we're going to run this play now with 1.4 seconds. Okay, we're going to run it with 4 seconds. Okay, we're going to run it with 6, or, maybe not 6, we wouldn't run it. But we told him in the timeout, with 3 seconds, you can catch and come down. So he knew, like, I can catch and I can find a guy, we can get a decent look off. And so he just makes a great play. I mean, catches, comes down, and our point guard, I couldn't believe it. Live, I could not believe how open it was. And it was right at the buzzer. It was close. You can see if Menelik runs the play. It's always hard as an assistant when something like this happens and you want to go run and jump and celebrate with your guys, but then you also want to be professional and go shake the coach's hand in the other line. And so you could see me get off the bench and I take like 3 steps to the dog pile, and then I realized, shoot, I should be professional. Look, I'm down here. I'm down. You can see me. I don't know if you can see it by the 3-point line. I'm getting off the bench. I'm excited as heck. Our first win. We're going to the Final Four, and then I'm, after a second, I realized, okay, I got to go be a pro here and shake the other coach's hand.
I mean, it's always fun when it's an exciting win like that.
For sure.
BT jumped off. He was just saying goodbye. So I thank you so much for your time. I asked you for an hour. I got an hour and a half. Really appreciate that. Usually after we finish these off, some of the coaches hang out. They don't always like to ask questions on camera. So up to you if you want to stay or not. But a lot of the time we end up just kind of shooting the breeze for a bit. So please feel free.
I'll stay. I'll stick around.
Awesome. I'm also going to say again, for anybody who's listening or watching, please tune into Slapping Glass. I mean, for me, it's been a lifesaver. Obviously, we're not playing as well up here. So lots of great content that's going on there. I kid you not, if I show you my watch later list, which is where I save videos that I want to go over and make notes, like 60 or 70% of it is stuff that you guys have put out. It's tremendous content. Please keep it up. So for anybody who's tuning in, I will put the link in the description for sure. And beyond that, I always like to give a big thank you to the Rising Coaches Network whenever I end one of these shows, just because so much of the connections I made with some fantastic coaches have come from that coaching tree throughout this past year. Next week in episode number 34, we've got Kostas I'm not going to say that properly. I'm sorry, Kostas Kalogeropoulos on doing some stuff from one of his games. So we got a Greekman coming in. I love it. As a half Macedonian guy myself, I'm looking forward to that one. Just thank you to everybody. As I always say, thank you to the coaches who tune in and join us every week. And thank you to all of you who listen in. And a special thanks to Dan Krikorian for joining us today. This was fabulous. Thank you for lending your perspective. I also want to say it's pretty cool to, like, a lot of the time, I made this joke with some people. A lot of the time you watch certain coaches who are really good at doing like podcasting or really good at sharing content, but then when you see them actually coach, you're kind of like, So it's awesome to see that, like, what's going on, sir. You can coach for sure. So like, I really appreciate you sharing your perspective with us. So Giant, thank you.
Thank you. And I appreciate you having me on. This was a lot of fun to go back and go over this and film. I mean, I am a film X and O nerd, so this is nothing else I'd rather be doing on Friday morning. So I appreciate it. Thank you to those of you that showed up and listened and asked questions. This was a lot of fun. So and thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. See you next week, all.